Tactical Team.
Hi there everyone, this is Malorian and this is the Orc Tactical Team. And this is going to be a special one because it is Orc Tactical Team number 200. I don't know how I got up this high, but here I am and I still managed to find things to talk about. This one here is going to be another viewer question coming from John Tailby, and this is one I've been asked before in the past, and it's kind of an interesting one because it's about a legend. No, it's not about Once Bitten. We already covered him. This is going to be about Sun Tzu and, of course, his Art of War. Very cool book, very important book, and something that a lot of people go to when they want to say, like, hey, I want to be better at Warhammer. I'm going to read this book. Now, the question here from John is, how much does this actually really apply to Warhammer? And the real answer here is not a lot of it. You know, this is a real thing where one thing was talking about real-time war, the other one is a board game. Sure, there's some things that cross over, but for the most part, there's a lot of stuff in there where Sun Tzu talks a lot more with actually avoiding war and going for peace and using the threat of war as your real answer and your real deterrent. And, you know, going more into the politics behind it and more like how to encourage your soldiers and stuff like this that really isn't going to help you in Warhammer. However, what we're going to be doing in this one here is covering 15 quotes that I think do apply and then just talking about those. So let's go with the very first one here. Be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Thereby, you can be your director of the opponent's fate. Now, with a lot of these things, I mean, I'm sure it's not like Sun Tzu wrote it in English, so you're going to find a lot of things where they're translated slightly differently. And I'm just going to be going with the versions that I got here. Now, with this one here, it's really talking about you shouldn't just go out there and be very obvious with what you're trying to do. Because once you are very solid in what you're trying to do in your plans, well, that's the point that your opponent can take that and try and counter it. So some of the easy ways we can go and try and apply this to Warhammer is don't go into a game bragging about what your strategy is. Like, oh yeah, these trolls are awesome, they're gonna kick your butt, but man, if you get them away from my general, I'm screwed. You know, why would you be going and pushing these things out? Or, oh man, you know, that thing's really scary in your army, but at least I got this to counter it. You don't do these things because then all of a sudden, like I said, they know what to do and what to stop against you and which ways to start attacking. So like this here, it's all about formlessness and soundlessness, because this is the way that you can then take the advantage of, okay, you don't know anything about me, but I can figure things out about you. And you can be, I mean, really can take these things and you can relate them to a lot of different things. It can even be like with your deployment, right? Don't be very obvious with your deployment. Try and be a little bit more loose and don't just jump into it and say like, well, it's obvious I'm going to be putting this chariot by this unit. Yeah, that's right, but maybe deploy those at different times during the whole spread so it's not very clear to them at this time that, oh, this is going to be supporting this. You know, while they're still thinking, well, maybe that chariot will be on the flank. Maybe it'll be somewhere else. Because as soon as you give that information to them, they can now figure out a plan to start beating it. Quote number 2, pretend inferiority and encourage his arrogance. And, you know, this can be a very easy thing to not be able to follow, because if you're up against an opponent who's very arrogant, you want to shut him up. You want to say, no, you're not going to kick my butt. These Savage Orc Biggins are going to crush your face and you're going to cry like a baby. But you don't want to do this because, again, once you're doing this, if they're not thinking about how great they are and how amazing they are, they're thinking about how to beat you. This is a real big thing that Sun Tzu says in the whole parts of his book, where as soon as you present a threat, that's when they're going to start developing a plan to defeat it. So again, if your opponent thinks that, you know, he's amazing and stuff, Let him think that. Don't correct him. You can also push this and go in and be like, oh yeah, I'm new. What are you playing? I've never played them before. But it's that whole ethical thing of how far do you take it as opposed to like, getting to lying and all the rest of it. I leave that up to you. But at the bare minimum, if your opponent's being arrogant, just let him, because then he's not thinking of the real threats in your army. Quote number 3. If you know your enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. Now, what this really comes down to is the whole idea where knowledge is the real key to any victory. And it's a two-pronged thing. You have to not only know your own force, but you have to know your opponent. Once you really know all the different key factors, well, you can already start piecing together how things are going to kind of roll out. It really is very interesting whenever you're playing a game with two very high-level players. And they know. It's not a thing where, it's a more amateur player, and maybe they know their own army, but they don't know their opponents. No, it's two people coming in, and I know exactly what your army can do. I know exactly what my army is going to do, and it's really now the balance of skill of who's actually going to use this. But definitely what's being said here is that knowledge is the very first level that you have to get at. And this is where it's important to do things where, I don't play Skaven, but I own the Skaven army book because I need to know what they do. Because if I'm going to go up and all of a sudden, a Brass Orb or Doom Rocket or something comes my way, I have to be prepared for it. And the only way I can be is through knowledge. Next quote. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. Now, the real thing here is the whole preparation for battle. You don't just kind of walk into a thing and then start putting it together. Although I know sometime as an Orc and Goblin player, and especially when my daughter made my list, that could be a lot of fun. But it's not the way to try and win games. What you want to do is go into a game being fully prepared, having a plan already in mind. And even though that might seem kind of stupid because, Malorian, you don't know who your opponent is, you don't know what the scenario is going to be, that doesn't matter. You should already have general plans already in your mind. Say, for example, maybe I'm running this dwarf line, and it's going to be exactly deployed like this in the vast majority of situations, and this is how it's actually going to interact with itself, and these are where my real strengths are, and this is how I can make this plan work out. If you go into a game with these ideas already in your head, you are way ahead, as opposed to somebody else that kind of like walks in and says, yeah, I just kind of grab stuff off my shelf. Oh, you got this and this and this. Oh, I better start doing a plan. You're way ahead of that guy. And you can even simplify this and just say that the people that do very well at Warhammer are the people that usually win in the list building stage, because that's the point where they planned out their list with a given tactic or strategy already. All right, next quote. He who knows what he can fight when he cannot will be victorious. He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious. And this is something that, man, I can't believe how many people don't get this one right. And what it really says is you have to know what fights you're going to win and what fights you're going to lose. And when it comes to Warhammer, some people just don't understand that you can't, it's not a necessity to win every single battle. There's some fights you're just going to say, like, you know what, I have no answer to that. And so I have to now go with a game plan that is based around not beating that unit. Let's say it has some super, there's the Troll Horde, or there is the big, huge Ogre Gut Star with tons of characters and all the trimmings. And you just say, like, you know what? I cannot beat that unit there. So I'm going to find where I can find victory somewhere else. And where I see this going wrong with some people is, first of all, they say, like, okay, that's your best unit, hey? All right, let's get them. And they won't do the math. They won't really reason it out. They'll just say, hey, well, clearly I have to table you to win. So if I'm going to beat this unit of yours, I'll throw all my best stuff at it. And if I lose, I was going to lose anyway. Or it could be another thing where, man, I see this all the time, where tar pits, your own tar pits are meant to lose, right? And yet they'll charge them into units, which will mean that there'll be an extra round of combat, when instead those tar pits could just instead walk in front of the unit and then wait for them to charge you, and therefore you gain an extra round of combat where you don't have a bunch of extra dead guys. It's just something that's very clear to it that, it's just funny. Like I said, you don't have to destroy every unit and win every battle on the board to win the game. Next quote. The opportunity to secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. And this is a very good quote, which really covers the whole idea that a lot of times the way that people win games is not what they do themselves, but by not actually making mistakes and by taking advantage of the mistakes their opponents have, right? A lot of times it's not really something where, like, I just had a super strategy and you just had no way to beat this and I won the game. A lot of times you see where these victories come up where, man, I just didn't really realize that I was showing this flank to that unit. And all of a sudden that just opened up my entire line. Because normally these superior tactics will find ways to chip away and get small victories, whereas mistakes can just devastate you in no time. And so that's what this is really saying here, is that you're not winning or securing ourselves against defeat within what you're doing yourself. It's going to be coming from your opponent. So look at them, look for their mistakes, because that's really the spots where you have to attack, because it's going to give you big points and really break open the game. All right, next quote. All men can see these tactics whereby I conquer, but what none can see is the strategy out of which victory is evolved. And man, this is something that can be very, very funny to watch. And what this is really, the way you can really translate this into Warhammer is netless, right? Anybody can go and look like, oh, how did you win? You just took a bunch of Mournfang? Oh, okay, I'll just take a bunch of Mournfang, and then I'll win the game too. And they don't realize why you took a lot of Mournfang. I didn't do it just because they're going to beat everything. I took them to try and crush the current meta. There's tons of infantry in there with low strength, and these guys are just going to go in there and chew them all up. That's the evolution of that victory, and it's more the idea that you built a list that's not just the best list that the army can make. You built a list to combat the meta. You are looking at threats. You're looking at what you are currently needing to have to win games, and that's what you're incorporating into your army. It's not just looking on the internet and, oh, that's a good list, I'll go use this one. And, you see that, where there's some new players, and they lose a couple of games, and so they go to Warsea or wherever, and all of a sudden the next game, like, wow, their list got a lot better. But they just don't know what to do with it, because they don't really even understand maybe what the list is supposed to do. Or worse yet, maybe they get in the internet list and they do is really good and they crush a game, and then everybody knows, like, oh, he's running this now? Okay, well, this is what you do to beat that. And all of a sudden they're left going, oh man, now I'm losing. I better go and find another internet list. Instead of, the real person who really wins a lot of games and who's victorious more often is the one that can actually predict the meta, see where it's going, and build a list of that, as opposed to just grabbing some internet list. Next quote. Opportunities multiply as they are seized. And really what this is talking about here is that once a crack develops, it just widens right up. And this really kind of goes with the other one, where you have to really look for the mistakes from your opponent, because like I say, like when you first look at the battle line, it's also kind of the thing where everybody says everybody has a plan till they're hit type thing, right? Where when you're lined up and you have your two lists there, a lot of your lists or a lot of your options are kind of limited. Yeah, I can attack these guys in the front, or these guys in the front, or these guys in the front, but that's really it. It's really just direct forms of attack that there's not a lot of options there. Once that first opportunity is seized, let's say like, oh, all of a sudden you show me a flank, bam, I'm into this. Now it's like, okay, now I can charge through and I can get to your bunker. Okay, well, all of a sudden now that this is broken apart and unsupported, I can now redirect this guy away, and this block that I couldn't deal with before, now I can, because this main supporting piece is gone, right? And that's just the real thing, like I was talking about before, that once that crack forms in that battle plan, man, things can just unravel very quickly. So that's, again, why it's very important, so that whenever you see that mistake, you got to get in there. Next quote. Invincibility lies in defense, the possibility of victory in the attack. Now, this is something that really doesn't really sound like the normal thing of, the best defense is a good offense, but at the same time, it is still kind of there. Invincibility lies in defense. And it's more the idea that if you want to survive, if you want to be there forever, you have to think of defense. You can't just go into your list thinking, okay, everybody go and attack, because then you're letting your core down and you can fall apart, right? People are going to get to your bunker and all these things. You have to have a solid battle line, making sure that you're covering all the attacks from all the different angles, so you can have, well, invincibility, which in more realistic terms is just the fact that you're not just going to fall apart to a stiff breeze type thing. The possibility of victory in the attack. And the real thing here, too, is really saying that whenever you attack, it's sure, that can be sometimes the only way to win is by attacking. However, you have to always remember that it's only giving you the possibility of victory. I can be sending out my knights and, oh, they're killed by fanatics. It doesn't always give you exactly what you want. Or by staying back and being defensive, I know I'm not giving anything up. If I push this up, the dice could always turn around against me and I could lose that. So it kind of something is here too, where again, it's more of the threat of aggression is your main tool to winning, as opposed to just pushing it forward and actually attacking, right? Hold back, keep everything together. That's where you'll find invincibility. The possibility of winning could be going out and attacking, but holding your center, looking for mistakes is the real way to go forward. Next quote. He who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not will be victorious. Again, covering that whole thing where lie in wait and look for those options. Really know your understanding of what things will roll down once they are set in motion, right? Man, if I set this out there, what's going to happen after? And just knowing it's better to wait for that best opportunity and best situation. Okay, now is the time to go, right? I'm not going to take my knights and declare this really fast initial charge because the probability is low, and once they fail that charge, now it's easier for you to charge me. I might be showing off a flank, all these things. Again, I want to hold back, I want to work on my core first, and then wait for you to make a mistake, and then attack that. Next quote. If you are far from the enemy, make him believe you are near. And again, that's a whole thing again with threat. And you can really see this a lot of times where if people feel that the opponent is far away, they'll spend a lot more time being very careful, trying to think of where they can attack because they have the initiative. A very good question of this could be, say, when you're up against a gun line. They know that, or even more like something where they're a more kind of a slow combat line, knowing that they're far away and I have lots of times to plan out my attack. However, if you make them believe that you are near and that you are threatening them, all of a sudden they're needing to try and think of something a little bit more quicker. They might make more mistakes. And with this too, it could be a thing where, again, it's the ethics of lying and all the rest of it, but it could also just be sometimes it is good to be telling your opponent the different threats that you might have, saying, well, sure, I might be a dwarf and I'm way over here, but I can charge, and 3 plus 2d6 means a possible threat range of 15 inches. So even though we're this far apart, I'm threatening up to here. And with the anvil, man, I could be doing even more. And this is one where you have to really be careful with it. Because again, you're giving up your cards. You're trying to show what you can actually do. But now what they're doing is, instead of taking their time and looking for the perfect way to attack, saying, well, man, I'm already in danger. I got to find a way to attack right away before he does this to me. And again, this is situational, but it's something you have to really keep in mind, that if you see that your opponent is cool and collected and they're forming a plan to defeat you, you might want to rattle their cage a little bit just to try and make them make that mistake so they can actually take advantage of it. Next quote. Hence that general is skillful in attack whose opponent does not know what to defend, and he is skillful in defense whose opponent does not know what to attack. Now, this sounds like a little bit of gobbledygook, but what it really says is you know you're good at attacking if your opponent has no idea what to defend. He's like, well, man, I don't know which way he's going to go. He has so many good attacking potentials that I don't know where I need to be really putting my support to really keep it together. Same thing going around the other side. The person who's really good at defense is the person whose opponent just doesn't know where to attack. You know, you don't have a lot of easy little weak links in your army. Everything is solid. When they look at your line, there is no good opportunities to attack. And that's really what you should be trying to push for. And know that, you know, a lot of times, if I'm doing it right and I'm doing a defensive army, there should be no weak links. They should look at my army and everything should be a bad option. If you're going for being very aggressive, you should be so strong across the whole line and have no weak points there as well, so that they can know, like, well, man, I don't know where to put my most defensive unit because everything's going to be smashed in the face, right? There's not just the one Savage Orc Biggins and a bunch of Night Goblins. No, there's Savage Orc Biggins, there's Trolls, and there's Black Orcs. I'm going to be killed all over the place. That's really where you want to be because, again, you're leaving your opponent saying, I don't know what to do, unable to form a plan, and then they're going to be making mistakes. 3 more quotes to go. Next quote. Thus, what is of supreme importance in war is to attack the enemy's strategy. This is something, too, where you don't always see this being done until you get to the higher level. What this really is that, I mean, you can look at the opponents and you can say, okay, this unit is going to counter that unit, this unit is going to counter that unit, and this unit is going to counter that unit. All right, let's go and let's play this out. However, when you start getting to a lot higher level play, the real way you're going to be actually beating them is by attacking their strategy. And that could be something where you know, like, okay, I know he's going to be trying to use those harpies to redirect my Savage Orcs. And then once he does, he's going to be trying to counter them. So what I need to do is kill those harpies so that he has no way to redirect my, my Savage Orcs at all. Or he's going to be using that unit to block this supporting unit so that he can take on this one. So I need to use something else to block that so that he can't block me. And it's a lot more in depth than, oh, this takes on that and this takes on that because archers beat fast cav and my knights beat his archers. You know, it's more thinking of what's his strategy. What is he trying to do to beat me? Because if I can stop that and defeat his plan, then I'm golden. Next one. All war is based on deception. And this is something where you think like, well, Malorian, you're not based on deception. You're just, go and kill stuff. But, you know, a lot, and this is the thing too, where Sun Tzu is talking about real war, whereas we're talking about little toy soldiers with magic and dragons. So we got to keep in mind that there is things that Sun Tzu were talking about which won't directly transfer over to Warhammer, but there still are parts that are. And it is very important, too, to be having deception inside of your Warhammer game. If your whole idea is to castle, well, start not with things over in that one corner. Have some more of your little throwaway units more around the middle of the board. Or maybe you can say like, yeah, and this is again, with all these things having to do with deception, it's the ethics of lying. How much are you going to push this? You could be saying like, oh man, I got a really castle to stop your army. Yeah, this hill here looks like the best place to go, so let's put my first eagle here or whatever, right? And then meanwhile, when they go and set up to fight that, haha, when it gets to the big stuff, I'm putting it over in this corner. You know, it's a big thing about deception, but it can be even simpler than that in saying it's all about not being transparent. Don't let your opponents know what your plan is. Keep that back if at all possible. Leave it open so that you have lots of avenues of attack so that they don't know which way you're actually going to be going and don't know your plan. And like I said before too, just don't offer up this information unless you really need to rattle their cage or something else. Make it so that that information is yours and not theirs, so that you have that key advantage in the battle. Last quote. The quality of decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victims. And really the thing is here is, if you think about the falcon and what it has to do, it has to figure out what am I attacking, where is it going to be, how do I want to swoop, at what angle, at what speed, because really this thing's coming down, and at one point it has to meet up with its target, otherwise it's a complete failure. And this is the quality of that decision that you can really see how it really develops in your game here. And if you're just kind of sloppily moving your stuff up into the units, and it's like, oh, well, it could have gone either way, that's not really a quality decision. That's just putting things up to chance. You want to see decisive victories. You want to see planning where, okay, I'm going to need to have the Night Goblins charge in to take away Steadfast. Then I'm going to charge in these chariots here because they're going to win the combat and they're going to be able to run it down, and I'll be up 500 points. You want to see decisive attacks that give you a clear advantage. You don't want to sloppily be like, okay, I threw these guys in and it was a really close victory. I just won by 1. Now he held. Now he's going to be able to go into flank, and I'm going to have to hope that I can flank him and hold and all these things. That's not what you want. You want decisive victories, and that's really what it talks about here. So there you go, a whole bunch of quotes for Sun Tzu. Very amazing book to read. If you ever have the chance, go ahead and read through that. But please know that Sun Tzu did not play Warhammer. He was a Chinese general, and what he did there was to win wars with real people. And so don't take every single quote that you have in there and try to apply it to your game, because there's a lot of things that just don't. If you really want to do something like that, go play some games of chess or something like that that really do work on the basics, because it's on a game anyway, right? But that's a different topic for a different time. This has been the 200th Orc Tactical Team, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.